Thanks so much, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We will continue the theme of burnout that Serna introduced to us. Our presentation will be more focused on recognizing and responding to burnout in the settlement sector. So before we start, I would like to acknowledge that our presentation that we're doing today, as well as the work of the research, has been done on the land that we're on, which has been the site of human activity since time immemorial. It's the traditional territories of the Huron-Wendat, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and most recently, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Ontario is covered by 46 treaties and other agreements and is home to many Indigenous nations from across Turtle Island, including the Inuit and the Métis. These treaties and other agreements, including the one dish with one spoon.
Interpretation, can you just slow down?
For sure. Sorry, I was going too fast. I tend to do that. Okay. So I will go ahead and start the land acknowledgement again. I would like to start our presentation by honoring the land that we're on, which has been the site of human activity since time immemorial. It is the traditional territories of the Huron-Wendat, Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and most recently the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Ontario is covered by 46 treaties and other agreements and is home to many Indigenous nations from across Turtle Island, including the Inuit and the Métis. These treaties and other agreements, including the One Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, are agreements to peaceably share and care for the land and its resources. Other Indigenous nations, Europeans, and newcomers were invited into this covenant in the spirit of respect, peace, and friendship. We are all treaty people. Many of us have come here as settlers, immigrants, newcomers in this generation or in generations past. We are mindful of broken covenants, and we strive to make this right with the land and with each other. I would also like to acknowledge those of us who came here involuntarily, particularly as a result of the transatlantic slave trade, and so I honor and pay tribute to the ancestors of African origin and descent. Okay, thanks so much, everybody. We'll start off with a very brief introductions. My name is Isa. My pronouns are she, her, and I work as a community coordinator at the Toronto Southwest Local Immigration Partnership. The Toronto Southwest LIP is essentially a community collaboration that brings together stakeholders in the settlement space within Toronto South and Toronto West, and we work to increase collaboration between these agencies and organizations, build capacity, and also, as you'll see throughout the rest of the presentation, research is another big one. I'm going to hand it off to my colleague Ruben to introduce a little bit about himself, the working group that led this work, and kind of set some context for the rest of the presentation.
Thank you, Isa. Hello, my name is Ruben Hadari Clark, and I'm going to not just introduce myself, but introduce what brings me here. And I'm here in spirit on behalf of my health and mental health working group, which is really the favorite part of my job, because I got to co-chair a group of managers and frontline staff that were interested in health of the community. But what I found and what we found is that we were all burnt out, or I wasn't exactly burnt out because I was new, but when I was in the room, whenever I tried to feel the vibe of the room was feeling burnt out. So one of the things that we wanted to do as a group was to do some research to assess whether or not this burnt outness was sector-wide or was it whether or not it was just us. And truth is, I kind of knew it was sector-wide, but having that research affirmed that. So one of the things that I wanted to make sure that we give in this presentation is affirming that. Okay, is that it? No. So yeah, the other thing I wanted to say in relating to that is we worked very closely with CMHA. And Irma, and she was a big part of this, and I just wanted to shout her out. So now we're going to both talk about what burnout is and also give more and tell you about the results of that research.
Thank you so much, Ruben. So as Ruben mentioned in our presentation today, I'm going to start off by giving a little bit of background and context. And then we'll have, for the most part of the session, Ruben will lead us through kind of a really interesting exercise, and we'll get to talk to each other and share ideas. So to start off, we're defining burnout here as chronic stress that leads to both physical and emotional exhaustion, as well as detachment from work and reduced professional effectiveness. So that's kind of the working definition that we'll use to contextualize the rest of the work. We know, as Ruben mentioned, that stress, burnout, as well as mental health challenges within the settlement sector are very prevalent and are growing issues, and they have considerable impacts in both the short and long term. So for sure there is a need to identify, first of all, and then address these challenges in order to prevent some of the consequences and really protect the health and well-being holistically for workers within the sector. So as mentioned, this session will highlight the recent work that was done in collaboration between the Toronto Southwest LIP and the Canadian Mental Health Association. And we'll also start to explore and discuss approaches to identifying and addressing stressors leading to burnout. And one of the things that we want to do today is really reframe what burnout means and how it kind of presents within individuals and within organizations. And we'd like for you to kind of start to think about looking at burnout from not just a personal place, but also structurally. So that's something that we'll get into during the presentation today as well. Okay, so to start off, for a little bit of background, when we look at some of the long-term effects of burnout, some of these I think will be very familiar to those of you in the room today. We can start to look at things like cognitive and emotional impacts that occur in the long term when folks are facing chronic stress over time. As you'll see in the research as well, burnout can lead to an increased risk for depression and anxiety disorders, and living in a constant state of emotional distress can have a lot of impacts, not just in how you show up at work, but also within your personal life, and kind of detaching from your personal, with your family or with your friends, and coming back to some of those emotional effects. Going to physical long-term effects, of course, this is kind of something that we've seen, and it might even come as sort of obvious, but living with chronic stress, as we defined burnout is, can lead to a whole host of long-term physical effects that can show up at multiple stages in life. So things like chronic fatigue, over the long term, compromised immune function, being unable to kind of fight off sickness as well as you could, as well as cardiovascular strain is another huge one that's been shown in the research. When we look at relational and organizational impacts, like I mentioned, tied very closely to cognitive and emotional impacts, we see people being unable to be completely present at work, as well as within their personal lives, and also just a breakdown in morale. I know Serna kind of mentioned this as to why we show up at work, right? Like what is driving us to be at work, and what is driving us to be present at work. That's something that we're going to talk about a little bit later as well. And then kind of on a wider scale, looking at the sector-wide consequences. When people are suffering from burnout, we see high turnover, and then we see effects on service quality as well, when people aren't able to support others as well, because they are experiencing some of the effects of that chronic fatigue and that chronic stress as well. So getting into the research findings, so just for a little bit of background, this was a cross-sectional study conducted between November 2024 and January 2025 this year, and it was done with settlement sector employees in the city of Toronto. And there were kind of three key areas that we wanted to explore or to understand. The first was to explore the mental health challenges faced by settlement sector employees. The second was to identify some of the key stressors. And lastly, really working to highlight some of the protective factors. So looking a little bit on the positive side that do support workplace well-being, as well as understand what the recommendations are from staff themselves who are working within the sector. The survey had 265 respondents, and I just want to note a few key things about the participant group. You'll see kind of right off the bat, 81.5% identified as female, and about 67% held frontline positions. So once I kind of go through the findings over the next couple of slides and Ruben gets into the discussion, please try and keep that in mind and help that to contextualize some of your thoughts. Okay, starting off with our first key theme, which is we found high rates of burnout, and that's something that might not come as a surprise, but just to highlight the sheer magnitude or the sheer prevalence of this amongst the survey group or the cross-sectional group, we found that amongst all of the respondents in the survey, about 41% reported their mental health as fair or poor. About 41% reported feeling burnt out. And then what the researchers did within that group was to separate out the burnout and the non-burnout groups and kind of analyze them separately to see what the stressors were in that sense. So you'll see kind of maybe like very overwhelming numbers. 75% of people who are experiencing burnout do report poor mental health, and this is significantly different than the 16.6% of people without burnout who don't. Almost 50% of people who are kind of classified as burnt out within the survey, almost 50% screened positive for depression, compared to 10.8% of those not experiencing burnout. We also, as I mentioned, looked at factors contributing to workplace stress and burnout, and this is kind of a comprehensive list, so I won't go through the figures as much, but the kind of really overwhelming and most prevalent theme was financial pressures, whether it's through wages or through the increasing cost of living. About 90%, a huge majority of employees with burnout reported that a stressor for them was financial pressures. And even within the group that is not experiencing burnout and is within that sample, 86.3% facing financial pressures, which is also a staggering number. The next stressor that we looked at was high workload and inadequate resources. And once again, 80% of those who are experiencing burnout are also experiencing the stressor. Personal stressors outside of work, about 75% amongst those who are experiencing burnout. Emotional exhaustion from caring for clients. So once again, 75.5% of those in the burnout group reported emotional exhaustion, and this can stem from a wide number of sources. We know within the sector there is a lot of discussion and around vicarious trauma and how we all hold that in our work. So this is something that we noted right off the bat in the research as well. Looking at kind of the workplace and switching gears to that, we see that the lack of adequate policies and support within the workplace are huge stressors. It's about 68.5% for employees with burnout. And this includes the lack of supervisor support experience at the workplace as well. Lastly, we see workplace discrimination, another key theme. About 42.2% of those with burnout reported experiencing workplace discrimination and identified that as a major stressor. So this is just a figure from our report. I highly encourage you to kind of seek out that report on our website as well. But this is just a snapshot of what I just shared with you over the past two slides. We see that there are different sources of stress. You can see them along the x-axis. And the different sources of stress identified by participants, you can kind of clearly see that in some stressors, there's not much of a difference of experiencing that stressor between the burnout group and the non-burnout group, but others there's kind of a little bit more. So this just paints a very interesting picture that we see that the sector as a whole, whether kind of they're identified as burnt out or not, is experiencing these stressors on a great magnitude, but there are still differences between those who are explicitly experiencing burnout as a whole. Okay, we'll switch gears and I'll kind of maybe try to switch to a little bit of a positive note. I know that was a little bit dreary, but talking about protective factors and recommendations. So the research found that some of the protective factors for participants include having supportive colleagues, having supportive supervisors at work, being given a manageable workload and the ability to work flexible hours, as well as participation in work-life balance initiatives through their place of work. There are also some recommendations from employees, and they kind of correlate back to the stressors that the participants were experiencing. So things like improving wages. This is something that 88% of the employees facing burnout express, and 72% of those without burnout. So kind of a wide agreement to have this as a recommendation. We also have flexible work arrangements as one of the recommendations, enhancing work-life balance, expanding mental health benefits, as well as fostering a supportive work environment. And something that we saw repeatedly as well was increasing job security in light of some of those financial pressures like wage and cost of living. Okay, this is just another figure here. I've kind of chopped it in half. There are, I think, double this if you are able to read the report. But I just wanted to illustrate that improving wages was top foremost in terms of employee priorities for reducing burnout and stress. And then you can see some of the other factors as well, like implementing flexible work arrangements and then increase or improve work-life balance. So there's a longer list in the report, but this is just a snapshot that I wanted to share. Okay, shifting gears a little bit, and this will kind of set us up for our activity later on. I want to start off by starting a conversation on identifying stressors and identifying factors that contribute or lead to burnout. So, like I said, we want to kind of expand our framework as to how we think about these factors. So what we're proposing today is we start to look at stressors as three kind of categories that intertwine with each other. The first is personal, then we get to organizational, and then we have systemic. And like I said, we do note that these stressors can fall into different categories, and there's different layers of how folks experience these stressors, but this is kind of a way to organize in our minds and start to pick out and identify the issues as they exist. So starting off with personal level stressors, we are kind of framing this as factors that are related to a person's lived experiences, in short. And that can include personal characteristics. It can include the approaches that you as an individual take to challenging situations or even positive situations, as well as situations on a personal level. We often see that the concept of resilience and building resilience within yourself is something that's really encouraged as a kind of protective aspect to dealing with personal stressors. But as you'll see in the next couple of slides, it is a little bit deeper than that. And then I want to mention as well that while we do experience different things based on our identity, based on our situation and our lived experience, these personal level stressors are not necessarily detached from wider organizational, wider systemic frameworks that we all live and operate within. Okay, I will not go through this whole list, but this is an example. These are examples of personal level stressors or indicators that you can use to identify sources that exacerbate burnout or that contribute to burnout. So we see things like isolation, we see self-blame and shame. Trauma is another huge one, experiencing tragedy or trauma within your personal life and how that shows up for you and how that contributes to burnout. We also have organizational level stressors. So these are mostly stressors that emerge from the workplace, whether it be through the culture of the workplace, the leadership, or how resources are allocated within the work that you do and the organization that you work at. This is also a place where we can see extraction and it's visible in the day-to-day workings of the organization. And we have a couple of examples for this as well. We see things like unrealistic workload, inadequate pay and benefits, unsafe workspaces, whether that be physical or emotional, as well as something that we all might relate to around deliverables and sometimes the overwhelming pressure of meeting funder guidelines and funder targets. And lastly, just talking about systemic level stressors. So these are stressors or factors that come from broader, more political, maybe economic and social conditions. And they shape not only kind of the world that we live in, but our organizations, our experiences as individuals, and kind of all relate and layer back on to another. So this can include things like experiences of violence, experiences of systemic racism, as well as oppression. And some additional kind of examples are listed on the screen here as well. One thing I wanted to note, we talked about a little bit earlier about our sample and how it was 81% women. So starting to maybe think about how the patriarchy and the feminization of care affects women in the workplace. Things like structural racism. Another huge one is immigration policy constraints and how we are all operating within the immigration system and the funding precarity that sometimes comes into the sector. So just to kind of summarize, we can look at it like this. This is a brief summary. So personally, you can kind of start to think about what you bring to the work as a person, as an individual. When we look at organizational, we can talk about what the workplace gives to you. And then when we look at systemic factors, we look at the wider structures that both you and the place that you work and the people that you work with, that we're all operating within. So you can look at it as a hierarchy, you can look at it as a web, whatever kind of comes naturally to you visually. But this is something that we just wanted to highlight. So before I hand it off to Ruben, I just want to kind of share some thoughts on the screen here. The last one in particularly, we want to emphasize that Ruben and I don't have the answers for all of you today, and we can't fix it in isolation. We can't fix it as individuals, but I think it's very important to highlight and identify the issues and call them out as they are in order for us to move forward and see how we can make things a little bit better. So thanks so much, everybody. I'll hand it off to Ruben and walk us through the rest of the presentation. Thanks so much.
Okay, so I know we said that we were going to affirm some things, and I also know that in the description of the presentation we talked about discussing systemic issues. So I'm actually going to go back to this slide because I don't think we talk about these. We talk about stressors a lot and like self-care and resilience a lot, but we don't talk about these things enough. So I just wanted to name them out loud. So the first one is funding precarity, right? Y'all know about how funding precarity shapes the work, right? And I also want to say this slide, and this slide, they're used more, I use them more as ways to brainstorm solutions, right? So like, how can we reduce cognitive load at work, for example, would be a way to reduce stress. But back to the systemic one. So funding precarity. That's almost the reality that sets the work, right? The next one, evaluation and quotas. We know how that causes stress, right? Like, and the other thing that I wanted to give with this presentation is if you are feeling burnt out at work, it is not your fault. It has nothing to do with you. It is you're living in a stress environment. Like if you're in a fire, if the house is, okay. The other thing I want to say, I'm excited, is after we finished the research and I was looking at that 41% number, right? And I shared it with people and they were like 41%. And I was like, no, that's a ringing alarm. That's a ringing alarm, right? The house is on fire. Yeah, I wanted to come here to this platform just to say the house is on fire in terms of stress, right? So if you're in the house and you're burning and you're burnt out, right? Where is the heat coming from? I'm going to name some sources. Okay, funding precarity, evaluation and quotas, structural racism. Like y'all know what that means. And also, y'all know what that means, right? But okay, so racialized staff. Sometimes like I'm a black man and my work is in anti-racism. What does that mean? That means I'm a black man and my job is to confront racism all the time. I wake up thinking, how am I going to confront racism today, right? Or I support people on their feelings about how they feel about racism. You know what I mean? Or like, you understand? I swim in it, right? And that's okay, I'm going to keep going. Immigration policy constraints. We know about this. We know about the 15% drop. And we know about how our work it's like being a fisherman. You know what it is. You know what it is. Okay, the next one, global crises, right? We are at the mercy of what happens in the world at all times. And we are often the caregivers in the world. Y'all understand. The next one, capitalist efficiency logic. That one reminds me of funding precarity and evaluation quotas. The next one, patriarchy and the feminization of care. As we said, 81%, I think it was 81% of people in the sector identify as women. So y'all, okay, right? Colonial context. Canada is a colonial nation. It is. We live in that, right? Some of our work, we're not for profits. We care. We try to, be decolonial or mitigate harm. But at the end of the day, Canada is a colonial country, right? And some of us would probably be doing this work for free because we care about it. And that makes us work more and volunteer more. Y'all understand it, okay. Underfunded social safety nets. A lot of our jobs act as the safety net, right? And we're underfunded. Y'all know. Okay, but I just thought I would say these things out loud because they need to be said. Then neoliberal downloading. This is really interesting. I think about this a lot. I think about how Canada as a nation has a lot of good intentions and they want to help people, right? But how do they do that? They fund not-for-profits to do the helping, which means they say if they were doing it themselves as Canada, the funding would be different, the benefits would be different, the game would be different, right? So it allows Canada to do the work for cheap, right? This is neoliberal down. Okay, y'all know. And then public hostility. We know the climate's getting more xenophobic, right? And we're swimming in that. So I just wanted to say all those things out loud. Okay, now going back to this. So at first we were going to make this presentation full of case studies and stories, but I felt uncomfortable talking about the trauma so much. So I wanted to shift and talk about, okay, what are the supports available? What is being done to help with the fire? Because things are being done. But I wanted to look at what was being done and compare it to what the survey people said they wanted. So I have an arbitrary grading system. It's not scientific. I can't defend it. It's a vibes type grading system, but it's worthy of discussion. So there's 4 levels. There's platinum, which changes the condition of work. There's gold, will produce strong results if enforced properly. Silver, supportive, with some impact. Bronze, all right, yeah. And then no metal. Okay, so the first one, compensation, benefits, and decent work. This got rated platinum because we work for money, and money helps. I'm not gonna, because of time, I'm not sure we're at for time, but I'm not gonna stay on this one too much, but it's basically anything that your employer does that takes into account paying you properly or paying you better. And that's what they asked for in the survey. They didn't ask for yoga classes. When they said, I'm burnt out, I need yoga. No, they said, I'm burnt out, pay me more. Right? That's what or give me less work and pay. Okay. The next one, flexible scheduling, hybrid work, and reduced hours. This does help. Like how the work comes, how the work flows does help. Right? So, not going to stay on this one too much, but yeah. The next one, peer support, supervisor debriefings, things like that. Like things that, allow you to talk to your manager about the work or things. This helps. This helps. But we gave it silver because even though there seems to be a lot of innovation in these fields and a lot of y'all are doing good work in these regards, my survey asked for less work and more money. But this helps. The next one, mental health resources and employment assistance programs. Again, this helps. But we gave it silver because it's individual focused, right? The trap is thinking that the solution to these systemic problems are in individuals' supports. But we are all individuals, so take the support, like maximize this. And one of the things that makes this a bit less impactful is the guilt we have as a sector in actually taking all of our benefits and taking all of our time because we want to give so much. I say to you, take it, take it, take it. Okay, so I'm talking about employment assistance support and stuff like that. All right, the next one, trauma and violence informed anti-racism training, right? And I'm an anti-racist coordinator. I do anti-racist training, but this doesn't always change the conditions of work. Like sometimes the problem with why I feel stressed as a black man doing anti-racism is not because I don't have enough information about race. That's not what y'all understand, right? But this work is important and it does have an impact. But training on its own without policy shifting, without substantial change is, okay. Wellness activities, self-care initiatives. Again, we rank this as bronze because if it doesn't change the workload, it's, what is it like? I'll tell you what it's like later, but yeah, okay. Then we have supportive management and like supportive organizational culture, right? If your managers or if the people who are able to shape your work are able to work with you, it's going to make an impact. Okay, so I was asking, and I guess I'll ask the room to think about this with me. What's missing from these interventions? Well, does anyone have any thoughts, comments? You can shout it out. What didn't I say, or what wasn't coming up?
I'm not sure if it's missing or it's something about other places that work is disability and disclosure, and disclosing, knowing that you feel safe to disclose disability to your workplace, and how that can interfere with your work in ways beyond necessarily burnout. I don't know.
I'm going to repeat it, but go ahead. Repeat it.
Okay, I said something that's missing from this discussion so far is disability, like having a disability, acquiring a disability, feeling safe to disclose disability to your employer, if there's accessibility requirements that or access needs that are addressed. And I think that's all I said. Yeah,
that's great. Yes, that is missing. Yes. I mean, I didn't come across too many mental health stress reduction strategies that explicitly supported disability. And you can see the question I'm asking is very specific, but absolutely. Anyone else? Can I get a show of hands? How many of y'all are in a unionized workspace? All right, is that half? That looks like half, right? Okay, because the thing that I thought was missing was like unionization, because that helps too, right? Okay, so part 4. This is going to be a group activity in a way, but it's going to be we're one big group, okay? And instead of giving case studies, I thought I would try to segment the entire sector into 7 categories, only 7, just arbitrary number, and then try to affirm or discuss what makes that type of work stressful. And then we as a group can tease out some of the systemic you'll see. Okay, so for each of the 7, I'm gonna name the core work in a broad way, discuss, and we can discuss some of the causes of stress or pressures. And then in that, we'll also talk about, okay, how do things like race, gender, status, or any other systemic factor that might not have been brought up complicate the issue? Does that make sense? Like being a black person doing anti-racism, or I have a friend in Alberta, and she's also black, and she has to be the person who fends off the soldiers of Odin. Like you're a black person on the front lines in Alberta doing anti-racist work. Like, anyways, so it's not just your job title. And then, but finally, and the part that interests me most is for each one of these 7 categories, I want us as a group to discuss what could help, because systemic change is always the answer, but when you're on fire, it's not always about systemic change. It's about what's going to help in the moment. So we're going to use this lens of what could help at a personal level, what could help at an organizational level, and what could help at a systemic level. All right, let's start. So the first one, intake and client services. So the front doors. This includes reception, client services, intake workers, screeners. Y'all can read the screen with me. Appointment bookers. Right, and the core work is about, greeting and screening for eligibility, handling walk-ins, booking and triage. Some of the pressures include the constant queue pressures, interruptions, client frustrations at the front gate. Sometimes maybe being the person that has, because okay, let's really think about this person. This person is the person that might have to say, sorry, you're not eligible for the service, right? So this is the person who says no, yeah? So this isn't the person who made any of the funding decisions, but this is the person who might have to see the sad faces the most, right? One of the metaphors that I felt like when I was working with the working group was, it felt to me like they all, because we do settlement, trying to find people in Toronto, housing, right? And that's kind of challenging. That was supposed to be a joke, but it felt like they were bakers at a bakery meeting, and there was no grain. You know what I mean? And it's Wednesday. And you're just like, yo, everyone's hungry outside, and like, I'm a baker, I got no bread, right? So these people say no, right? I guess my question is, what kinds of interventions or support helps? Because I'm supposed to make this presentation about how to respond to burnout. So your intake worker friend shows up and says, yo, I'm burnt out. What do I do? How do I help? I'm listening. Does anyone have any thoughts, questions, comments, or concerns about this? Or is anyone doing this type of work right now that has a secret they want to share? What helps? What could help? Yes, please. I need some, because I don't have anything in my pocket. There's going to be...
I'm just thinking... Oh, thank you. Okay. So if that situation happens, I usually talk to individual to explore options that she or he has. In terms of what can we do to help. Either talking to, a manager, raising this, burnout, finding solution, basically. That's what I can think of right now.
Okay, talking to your manager. That's great. That helps, right? Okay, anything else? I don't have the right answer. I'm not, but we need to talk about this as a team.
Okay, hello everyone again. I like to always answer questions in the context of which I understand it. Like, for example, talking about the roles, and using, I want to use, because one of our core programs, I'm with Rexdale Women's Center, by the way, one of our core programs is settlement, information and orientation. So, and for those of you that are in this room that have the same funding, we know about the number of clients that each worker or counselor is expected to serve in a year or a day. So that brings about that role part, and that leads to burnout, if we're talking about burnout, because in the quest to service or support the number of clients per day, the quality reduces, and then the burnout comes in because they are rushing to meet up that quota or that target. So that is in the context to which I'm addressing the roles that we're talking about.
Can I ask you a question about how do you help that person who's at the mercy of these numbers, right?
Yeah.
How do you help them?
So, I think during the first presentation, the presenter talked about the foundation and the fundraising that happens once a year. I don't know also how it happens in other agencies, but in my agency, you are allowed to buy a day off, so that you can take any day off when you have purchased that day from that foundation of fundraising. And then also we also have in place, sick time, that when it was sick time, we have 2 days for full-time staff. We have 2 days in a month where staffs can take full time off for sick. And the sick time doesn't necessarily mean when you are actually in the hospital. Sick time could be when you're getting low and getting close to becoming burnt out. It's also for your own mental health, because mental health is also like part of the sick time. So you can take that time off to recuperate, re-energize, and get yourself back. Unfortunately, in regards to target, nothing really can be done because that's under the contractual agreement between the agency and the funder. So really nothing much is done on that. But then we have other mechanisms in place that workers or counselors can, use to their benefit to take care of themselves, to try to avoid that burnout. But with this, unfortunately, nothing much can be done because that's the agreement.
Thank you. Can I ask the organizer how much time I got left?
You have time.
How much?
Did you finish your presentation?
No, I got more, but I'm just seeing how much I got to rush.
You have 25 minutes.
25 minutes? Does that include questions?
Altogether, question and answer.
Including question and 25 minutes? Okay. Challenge accepted. All right.
Okay.
I'm going to move on to so the next one is settlement counseling and case management. This includes settlement counselors, case workers, case managers. What else we got here? New school liaison, youth workers, refugee resettlement workers, gender-based violence workers. Is that domestic violence? You see, domestic violence settlement workers, they assess needs, they plan, they advocate, they accompany people across all of these different realms as they settle. That's really beautiful work. And the pressures are high caseloads, moral injury when the systems fail. This one is the one that I want to point to. Vicarious trauma. Like this, you know how hard it would be to try to help people with work right? Okay, I'm not gonna get does anyone have any gifts or advice or thoughts that could help somebody at this level or doing this type of work? If you don't, I'll keep it moving because I'm asking the question because I don't have the answers, right? But because it's hard to, have a solution when they're in a bigger world, right? Okay, but I just wanted to point to that one. Okay, so the next one is specialized legal. You see it. So this is immigration navigators, housing navigators, shelters. I heard recently Toronto changed up their shelter rules. So you can't stay in the shelter as long. I'm just thinking if your job is to help people in shelters, right? And you see how much they help, and then you hear, all right, 1 year it's 3 months in the shelter, and which is not enough. And then the next year, because of some rules that some people made, it's now 2 months in the shelter, right? And it's tough. It's tough. And I guess I'm just affirming it by naming it. But the pressures here, it says complex ethics. Because then imagine you got to decide who to kick out, who not to kick out. You know what I mean? And that's your job. I'd rather break rocks. That's tough. Okay, I'm going to keep it moving. The next one, we have language and employment services. I heard recently that, you would get your language classes up to level 5, I think it was, or something like that, and level 4. But there's one level that you need to actually work properly. There's the actual real level, and now they're funding it the level lower. What do you imagine? You're an English teacher, and you're I can only teach you up to halfway. And now you're excited to go to work when? Okay, I'm just naming it for y'all because it doesn't sound like we got all the solutions. I tried to name some interventions early, but we're gonna keep going. This is outreach, community development, and peer programs. They build relationships, they co-design groups, they recruit, they run events. These types of people are like small organization and they're doing a million things, you know what I mean? They're writing the grants, they're doing the evaluation, they're running the programs. These cats are underrated. I used to be one of these cats. Okay, but and the burnout for this level, when you're like all-in-one organization, you sleep but you dream of work. Like, because, and like when you might be taking a break from writing grants while running a program. Like it's a level. Yeah, what could help them? Grant writing support? No, but that comes with more deliverables, right? So okay, we're gonna keep going. Program coordination, data and quality, program coordinator, assistant, monitoring, evaluation. So these are the types of people that get you the grants. They're negotiating with the funder, but they're still employed. Do you know what I mean? So that's an interesting thing here. They got deadlines, they got reports. I'm gonna go to the last one, management and operations. What I found interesting when I was doing my health and mental health work was that the managers will come to the meetings trying to think about the health of their staff. Because remember those yoga classes and those other things that I was being critical of? The managers are implementing them, right? But who's running the yoga classes for the managers? You know? Also, the other thing about this one's interesting is I also included CEOs and people like that, like the person who was actually making the funder agreement. You imagine, you know that like the funding agreement's flawed, that the numbers, as you said, some of those numbers don't change, but you make the handshake, you're happy to do it to serve your community in what ways you can, and you're the face of your organization. Can you be running out saying, yo, the funding agreement's it's flawed, they're trying to make me do more with less again? I said yes, because if I said no, what happens? You know, like who do you go to for support? I don't know, but I just wanted to say out loud that I see the tension that you're under. I see it, right? And it is a real tension. And you're not, you CEO, person who runs your organization, you're not the cause of the quotas. You're not the cause of the neoliberal downloading. To your staff, you're the face of it. And when they tell you that they're overworked, you tell them what? Take your sick days, or you can have you give them piecemeal solutions because what else you got, right? Okay. Now, I had alternate. I had two versions of this, but we're gonna skip that. Okay, so I'm gonna summarize everything. So our research really basically says, some of us are burnt out. Some of us. I'm understating. It also tried to discuss the causes of burnout and the causes of stress operate at 3 different levels, right? Level 1 is really understood as your resilience in a way, but I don't like talking about level 1 too much. Level 2 is where you work and what the work looks like. And level 3, like right now, like for example, level 3 that's coming for us is the funding cuts sector-wide and all the drama and all the cascading drama that's going to cause. That's level 3 type stuff. But you know why they're doing. I'm not going to get into the politics, but there are reasons why that's happening. It's because the nation as a whole is moving to the right? And politicians are trying to stay in the zone of attention, and they're trying to, anyways. So, and I tried to show a mirror and let the sector be seen in the levels of stress. I checked the energy of the room, and it didn't seem like we were going to come up with any brand new solutions overnight. So I skimmed by that and now I get to the ending. So in my head, I'm talking to myself a lot and talking to my imaginary ancestors a lot about this work and about yoga classes. And a joke in my head came, and it's a terrible joke, but I think I can't shake it because it makes me laugh. When I would read about the reasoning that some of the good programs were even getting funded, some words kept coming up, kept saying reduce staff turnover, keeping staff, right? And I was thinking about that. Keeping staff, that sounds really good, right? Let's put this on a plantation. Let's say the work now isn't this modern day, not slavery, but let's talk about a slave plantation. And let's talk about what reducing staff turnover would really mean. That would be slaves running away or slaves dying, right? Now, a funder is a numbers person. Let's take morality out of it. They're numbers. They're just a number machine, right? Because they have a bunch of humans that they want to help, and they have money, and they're trying to get the most for their money. We're talking numbers. So, but plantation people, they're talking pounds of cotton, right? They're talking cotton, right? So you say we're having a lot of staff turnover, cotton yields are down. And then you say, what do we need so that you don't die? We need water. Okay, here's your water. What am I saying to you? I'm saying to you that any logic that produces a solution rooted in efficiency logic is basically plantation logic. The funder will fund whatever is needed to keep the work going. That's how we get them to give us the money. That's the argument. And what I mean by that is that's a better way to say it. If we are making our arguments for staff well-care rooted in reducing staff turnover, we're appealing to efficiency. We're appealing to numbers. We're saying numbers that training new staff costs more money than keeping the old ones. So let's have some yoga classes. Let's do some things so that they don't burn out totally. It's the lowest common way we can help. So, but I'm going to keep going. So staff retention that is rooted in funder logic is limited. That's the thing. So to answer why none of these interventions are going to be sufficient is because they're water used to keep you alive, to keep you working, to keep the system running. That they can't be more because they're funder logic. And I kept trying to come up with solutions that were better, but because I was still thinking in professional speak, because I still had my professional hat on, I couldn't do it. But when I took that hat off and talked to myself like I love myself, like, oh, my job is killing me. You know what you'd say to somebody who you love that said their job was killing you? They wouldn't say, maybe you should try a yoga class. What would they say? Anyone? What would love say? Leave, find a better job, take care of yourself, do whatever. It wouldn't say, start a petition for a yoga class. It wouldn't say, advocate so you can get some help later. It would say, take care of yourself now. So, while I'm all for advocacy, I am all for it. That's why I'm doing this right now. That survey that we did was ammunition for further advocacy. That's what it was. But if I'm supposed to talk about how we respond to burnout, take care of yourself. Talk to yourselves like you love yourself. Don't talk to yourself with efficiency logic. Think outside of the sector. Like, we're funded to work. We're funded to do. Think outside of that. Because plantation logic can't offer you compassion. Okay, so what would I say to somebody that was burnt out that I loved? I would say, you are special and unique. You are precious. But in the work world, you are replaceable. That's what staff turnover means. We live in an environment where that job that you hate, somebody else needs. So you are replaceable. So your sacrifice will not be rewarded. You will save the world. You are saving the world, but you can take care of yourself and still save. You understand what I'm saying? Also, drink the water. Take the yoga class. Take whatever they're going. Because I asked for that water on that plantation. Why? Because I wanted to live. And while I'm drinking that water, I'm thinking about the Underground Railroad. You understand what I'm saying to you? Okay. Take all the support. Yeah, I think that's it. So I think I'm at time-ish. We can do questions. I think I got 5 minutes for questions, right? Okay. Thank you.
Carolina, any question online? We can start with that. Yeah. Question here. No, they will.
Okay, I have a question. What would be a better job?
It's all relative. Like food that you throw out, someone else calls a dinner. It's all relative, right. And I think that's something that me and my ancestors talk about too. Like, I'm calling this job plantation. They laugh at me. They laugh at me. Like, it's relative. It is relative. It is all relative. But this is in a non-professional context. It's relative, right? In a professional context, it's a different conversation. In a professional context, you argue that, some of us get paid differently for the same amount of work, and, but it's all relative, and be as strategic as you can. Take care of yourself. That's what I would say to a human that I was facing that said, I'm burnt out. I would say, do what's best for you. It's relative. Mm-hmm. So I don't have the answer. Right. That's my answer.
Okay, I just want to add something to it, because I think you're bringing up a really good point, and I think that we can't really, the solution to a job is another job, right? But again, we're all within the system where a job is what it is. It's not going to change the system, right? So I guess the question is, what do we need to do to start making cracks in the system? I think we need to do some unexpected stuff. We need to behave in unexpected ways. We need to push the envelope a little bit. We need to, like how you did some of that today. You talked about, you went outside the professional bounds a little bit in your talk, right? And we need to all do that as much as we can on a daily basis, because we really are living in the boxes that are created for us by our job and by jobs in general, right? By the system that creates jobs as a means of survival. So I really appreciated what you did at the end of your presentation.
Thank you. You'll notice I did most of the professional. I got like 1 or 2 slides of my mask off, right? Most of it was mask on. There was a reason for that as well, right? But yes, thank you. Any other questions? You said there was comments? Someone said there was comments. From the chat or something? From the chat. Uh-oh. Hi, Internet.
Okay, so Fatima is saying, what a phenomenal speaker and energy in delivering such relative information. The question is for you, how do you take care of yourself first?
Me? I talk to myself like I love myself. Like, and we're really strategic. We nap. That's it. What would I do if I loved myself right now? And then I do that, Yeah, and I think laughter is important. I think also understanding that the purpose of life isn't just to work or to have a revolution and avoid work. The purpose of life is to live, to love, to breathe, to dance, to do those other things, right? So I try to, when I can, shift my attention and focus towards why I work, which is to live, if that makes sense. But I do all the self-care things I can. Yeah, so, and I trust, the other thing is, just trust yourself. If you feel tired, if that voice in your head says, maybe we should find another job, do that. Thank you. And also thank you for the nice comment, Internet. I appreciate you.
Thank you. And then we just have one last comment. We are passionate about our work in settlement services, but we urgently need a sustainable solution regarding IRCC funding. Vivian says this.
Again, I ask everyone, how many of you are unionized? And I think the next presenter is going to be talking about advocacy, right? So that one's going to be a hot presentation. So if you're not signed up for that on the internet, sign up for that. The next presentation is talking about advocacy. That's a plug. Okay, are we done? No?
One more question.
Let's go.
Hi, thank you so much for that incredible presentation. I have 2 comments. One is, question. Where can we find the report?
Good question. It is in 2 places. It's on CMHA's website, and it's also on TSLIP's website. But I think if you want, we can send it out to all participants. Can we do that? Because, that's what y'all want. Yeah. And I know we should have had a link for it. My bad.
And, okay, this is the second comment, which is that I think everybody saw there was a survey on your table, and this is actually a continuation of the study that Ruben and his colleagues did with Irma at CMHA.
Yeah.
And because it went so well doing a Toronto-based study, CMHA Toronto reached out to OCASI And by the way, I'm Kaylee. I run the mental health promotion project at OCASI. So we're actually continuing the same work, and it's specifically for all of Ontario outside of Toronto now. So if you are from an organization outside of Toronto, yeah, I believe that's the rules. You can double check on the flyer. It'll tell you if you can participate or not. Please do fill out this QR code because we're trying to get more of a response uptake outside of Toronto right now. Thank you.
Please, please, please. That was the plan. Yeah, and then if
we
you're
will
not
share that information with online participants tomorrow.
That's it. Also, I want to thank my co-presenter, Isa, because I changed this presentation 50 times. Like, I gave the last draft 10 seconds, and she's been amazing and a great support. You can please give her a round of applause.